Hello, Internet. It's Sunday again, and we are here with Runen and Talt to discuss what is going on in Canada, the two millennial dads. Welcome back to our session. And Talt, do you want to say anything before we start?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. It's Sunday, so here for another episode.
Awesome. So I guess the first article we want to start out with is, and we're just starting to figure out the technology here, but I'm just going to show you. We've got articles. We can show you the article that we're talking about. Why don't we start with the CBC head, Catherine Tate, summoned to Commons Committee over job cuts, executive bonuses. CBC Radio, this is just a quick synopsis of this article. CBC Radio Canada to cut 10% of workforce and some programming. Don't think there's a lot of loss there, as it faces a $125 million budget shortfall. So, I think this is a pretty substantial article.
You know, the sad part is that I'm pretty sure in the article it states that the bonuses that they're giving the executives total to about like 100 some million or something along those lines. So if the executives were not to receive those bonuses, they could keep that staff rather than fire them just before Christmas.
Well, it's just, exactly. It's just such a dick move. I'm just like, you talk about, everybody bitches about how corrupt corporations are. And you look at here's an absolute corrupt public organization where you are cutting programming because nobody watches it. You're given $1.3 billion and you still have $125 million budget shortfall and you're giving bonuses? What's up with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other real kick in the face is that, like, just the whole fact of why are people not watching the CBC at this point? I mean, the programming is terrible. There's nothing really, like, for example, for someone like myself, there's no real incentive to watch the CBC. Like, even when it comes to the news at this point, I would much rather watch other news sources than the CBC because, like, first of all, I used to really like Power and Politics that used to be on, but it just got so bad. Like, I mean, you can tell that they have individuals that they're more leaning towards and are softer when it comes to questions and everything like that. And from the actual national broadcaster, I would hope that they would be hard on everybody and actually ask difficult questions, but that was never really the case.
Well,
a lot of it just butting up.
Oh, totally. Well, it's just like, I have no problem with crown corporations. I back in the day, I liked CBC. I was proud of CBC because they did try to keep as neutral as possible between, criticizing government, criticizing opposition. But it just now it's a joke. It's always criticizing the Conservatives, barely criticizing or asking questions about the Liberal government. And the programming, I think the last show I saw out of CBC was Schitt's Creek. Mm-hmm. That was the last one. And it was a pretty good show. Like, obviously it was very, heavy on the message, but overall it wasn't that bad. But yeah, like I said, that was the last show that I watched. Like the programming is, is it's so bad.
The problem is that, like, they implemented a mandate, making sure that everything is diverse. And the problem is that you can have, like, diverse stuff, but you need to have good story, good plot, and good acting. And when you're lacking those things, you're just not going to have anything.
If you're lacking those things, you have a $125 million budget shortfall with $1.3 billion. Let's be honest here. Like,
and the other thing I was going to bring up was, like, let's not ignore the fact that one of the responsibilities is to be the executive or the head of CBC is to live in Canada, but we both know where she lives.
Starts with New and ends with York, I think. Well, that's the ridiculous thing. I know that I know some people who work in government, and their expectations are, you have to work in Canada or you have to work in the province. and you have the head of a crown corporation who is making probably $500,000. I don't even know how much she makes. $500,000, and she's not even contributing to the economy here. She's contributing to the American economy. Like, what the hell's going on with that?
But I mean, she's got to live in New York to be beside her husband. I mean, I get it that her husband has some type of medical issues, but like,
I don't. Why doesn't she come back to the wonderful healthcare system of Canada?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, like why is the American system so much better? Why isn't she coming to Canada if he's Canadian?
Well, we know that. I mean, she's got money, so basically they get bumped to the top of the line. Yeah, but if they were in Canada, maybe he might be suggested maid.
Oh, they would totally be suggested maid. That's our healthcare system now. Is just maid, right? So. Yeah, I find it ridiculous, like, you know, and how nobody, like, this is just acceptable by our government to be like, oh yeah, we'll just pay her, you know, and also giving bonuses, and you have to cut. Yeah. Who gets a bonus for cutting 10% of your workforce? Does that speak of success to you, Talt?
I mean, apparently the CBC is someone that does something like that, where you can do a terrible job of actually running a network and still get, executive bonuses. Like,
yeah, like
at the end of the day, this is a massive smack to the taxpayer's face, where there is a certain level of trust basically put into the system that you are supposed to be running this organization, realizing that this is not actually your money, this is taxpayer money, but we've seen it with a lot of NGOs lately where it really feels that they're just in it to be cash cows.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a degradation of what actually means to be a public servant, and actually serving the public in the better interest. Like in these people are just out for themselves. And their group, like I let's be honest here, it's not just themselves, it's the group of people that they will also, like, they're all buddy and chums, right? Like it's like the perfect elite. Like, they are the elite that are just asking for more money, and who are they screwing over? They're screwing over the regular, average Canadian, who I'm sure would love to watch the news or watch good programming. Like, we grew up with CBC. We grew up watching the shows, and some of them were really bad, but some of them were good. And now it's all trash. It's all bad.
I mean, when I was young, the only channel that we had was CBC. I remember with the rabbit ears, and we never had cable, so all we really got was CBC and Radio to Canada. And I guess one of the things that really kind of bothers me is you see this kind of rampant in many levels of government at this point, where you have individuals and they're only really in their position because obviously they make more money. And they're some of the worst individuals to actually be in those positions, because when you're in a leadership type of position, your job is very much to bolster your team and make them rise to do their best.
Well, and also, do their best, but also perform. Like, if you are at a leadership level of an organization, you're there to ensure that you're performing. And when it comes to a crown corporation, you're provided $1.3 billion. I expect damn good content coming out of CBC for $1.3 billion. Like,
but I think go for it.
No, it's just I'm just shocked and amazed at how poorly managed these people are, and yet they still keep their jobs. Like, if this was a private organization that you have just had $125 million shortfall, you'd be fired. The stakeholders would be coming after you.
Well, that's part of the problem, is a lot of these crown corporations, specifically the CBC, they're not accountable to anybody.
No.
And the people that they are accountable to right now are the liberals, who are just giving them, billions of dollars at this point, like almost, $2 billion per year? I wouldn't be surprised if that number gets increased when, it comes to it again.
I'm sure it will be increased, right? Okay, well, let's move on to our next story here. Let's just go back up here, because we could talk about the CBC and how wonderful an organization it is for days. Let's talk about our next story. and it kind of in the same vein of money and how, where our taxes are going towards, Canadians will see less in their paychecks in 2024 due to new tax hikes. So Canadians are about to take home less from each paycheck starting in January, as income taxes are set to increase. Federal Employment Insurance, EI, and the Canadian Pension Plan, CPP, will have changes made to them in 2024 that will lessen the amount of how much Canadians will ultimately take home. So what are your thoughts about this?
I think that this is going to make life for everyone that does not have a cushy job way harder to survive. Actually, it was kind of interesting because me and my wife were having a conversation, coming back from picking up groceries. And, like both of us were kind of asking each other, like, how do people that work minimum type of jobs even survive at this point? Because, like, we spend almost like $400 a week on groceries, and it doesn't feel like we really get that much.
Yeah.
But that's the cost of everything at this point. Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm pretty good at my shopping. But I do like Costco and I'm buying in bulk. Like I have to think my meal plans out. I have to freeze a lot of stuff. I can't get super fresh stuff. Every week I'm spending about $150, but then I'm going to Costco and I'm spending $400 or $500 for 2 weeks, or 2 to 3 weeks. So that's insane. And funny thing happened to me this morning when I went to the grocery store. And this cashier was ringing through, and she's like, "Oh man, I miss Triscuits." Because I bought some Triscuits, and I'm like, "Holy shit!" Like, I'm pretty sure you're talking about how you don't have enough money to go. You can't afford them. Like, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous.
A lot of my coworkers that I have right now, at this point, they're spending 70% of their income on housing costs. How do you afford to live on something like that? And these are individuals that have paying jobs. So when you hear that the taxes are going up, and then you see stuff like, for example, with CBC and them squandering the money that they receive, and then you start seeing about all the peripheral type of programs that the government basically has that are failing in many regards, you're left going, why are you people in charge? Like, it really feels like you are robbing us and enriching yourselves in this situation.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, I have no problem paying taxes. I don't even have a problem paying high taxes. I really don't. But I expect the services to be good, great. Like, I don't have a family doctor. I don't even know if there's going to be anything left in the Canadian pension plan by the time I retire.
I think that's one of the scariest things is, I actually don't expect to be able to retire at any point. Well, even though I've paid in, to the Canadian pension plan since I was, as early as I could.
Yeah, like I started working when I was 16, 17, right? So we've been paying into the CPP for decades, and I'm worried that I'm not going to get anything out of it. I'm also worried. It's just like, I already see what our future is. Like my mother, who's 72, is still working. Still working.
Yeah.
Because she obviously made some mistakes in her life, but at the same time, it's just like she should be retired. She can't retire. She's got too many bills to pay. And it's really sad when you have a well-paying job, and I know a lot of people who have well-paying jobs. And like not like insane amount of money, but 30 years ago, if they had the same job, they'd have a new car, they'd have a nice house, they could go on vacations once a year. Now they're like exactly what you said. Well, 70% of my money is going towards food. Like, it's insane to me.
Well, the other thing is, like, look at what 100K gets you nowadays. Like, 100K back even like 20 years ago was like an amazing salary. Like, you were a very well-off individual.
Yeah.
100K now is basically like, oh yeah, it's a mediocre salary. A lot of people basically are making that type of stuff. And then you start thinking about like what minimum wage actually is. And these people are lucky if they take home like $20,000, $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
And like, there's the reason that you have six families in a house at this point.
Well, I think it's minimum wage is $36,000 a year.
I think so, something like that.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? Is you have what is it? I think 11 million people in Canada are below the poverty line. Like, they can't live. How's anybody supposed to live in this country? If you can't afford food, you can't afford rent, you can't afford to pay for your car because, you know, carbon taxes and all that jazz. Like, how do you live?
I don't know. Like that's the hard thing that I can't even really see at this point, because how are people even affording groceries at this point when you're paying, you know, 70-80% of your income, or like your take home wage for residents, and then you get to this news that, oh yeah, the amount of taxes that you're going to be paying is going to go up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be completely honest,
go ahead. No, you go.
I was just going to say, like, to be completely honest, like, this drives me nuts because there's so much mismanagement within government that it just, you see it and you're kind of left going like, okay, well, it's nice to know that all my hard-earned money and not being able to buy food for my family is, you know, well spent.
Well, and it's also like in a country like Canada, right? Like, we are an agricultural, like, superpower. And you know, especially with climate change that's happening, like, more of our land is being able to be utilized for different crops. And instead of like pushing into that, leaning into that, being like, yeah, farmers, we're going to support you. We want you to expand. We want you to grow it more. We want you to, lower those grocery prices. Hell, we want to process the food in Canada to make more jobs. What do? We're shutting down farmers. We're making it more expensive for them to farm. We're moving out manufacturing of these food products, and then we're taxing everybody into oblivion. And it's just nuts to think that, you know, even if people who are actively trying to get ahead in life and you know, going from one job to the next job and trying to make more money, they're just getting more taxed. Like, how do you get ahead?
I think one of the funniest things is that the left used to be pro agriculture and pro farmers, and now apparently they hate them because they view the farmers as ultra right-wing fascists. And I mean, the sad part is that we definitely need to be investing in the infrastructure. The one thing that I keep saying to a lot of people is that in order to have a healthy country, your government needs to spend money on the 3 pillars, which is basically infrastructure, healthcare, and education.
Yes, I agree.
And we have been lacking in all 3 of those main pillars for the last 50 years or so, and we're definitely seeing that, because it really feels like the cracks within Canada have basically shown themselves, and they're not actually being mended at this point. They're literally just being, you know, further widening at this point.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is, I don't know if you've noticed, but like, you see these problems, we talk about these problems, but there's just a malaise over government agencies. It's just like, you know, you see healthcare, for instance, and it's just like, people are there's you know, unsanitary condition in hospitals. There's overcrowding. There's offer made left, right, and center. And what's government? It's like, yeah, it's broken. Well, how are you fixing it? Well, we're not fixing it. What do you mean you're not fixing it? Same with the education system. You know, like, I'll tell our audience here. You know, I used to be a former teacher. I know how bad our system is. Like, we haven't updated how we teach children in this day and age, and it hasn't been rethought. And now they're just introducing just woke stuff into like 1 + 1 = 3. You know, it's just like these ridiculous things, or 2 + 2 = 5, right? And it's just like those kind of things, right? And infrastructure, you know, I have no problem with, you know, electric cars. If you want an electric car and you can afford it, I don't really care. I don't think you should force it on anybody else or on society. But, you know, they're saying everybody has to have an electric car. Well, what about the infrastructure? We don't have enough electricity. We can't have everybody have an electric car. We couldn't. Our electrical grid would collapse.
Well, let's even think about the climate across Canada. You really think in the north, electric vehicles are going to be?
Oh my god! Well, think about it. Like in the north, right? Like, first of all, people don't have a basic understanding of science that battery technology is not that great if we think about it from a human standpoint. We do not have good battery technology. Second of all, battery efficiency drops off significantly after -10. And so you think of somewhere in the north where it's like -40. Do you want to be an electric vehicle in -40 where you're in a lone highway thinking, am I going to make it home during a blizzard? You're going to die. Yeah. You're going to freeze.
And the infrastructure and the facilities in order to have one of like a power station just does not exist.
Well, the funny, that is true. But also, did you see Edmonton had they bought electric buses? And they only run for during this cold season. They only run for 2 hours before they have to be charged.
Oh my god! So well, that's great planning and thinking right there.
Yeah, so you'd have to buy, and then what happens at the end of life, right? Like everybody's like, oh, it's more green. Electric vehicles are green. It's like, no, they're not. Lithium is not green. Lithium is very toxic. A lot of the materials to make batteries is very toxic. So what happens? There's like, oh, just buy more buses. Okay, you have 1,000 buses. What happens end of life? We can't recycle those.
Yep.
So they just...
Or even... I was going to say, even the fact that, where do you think the energy comes from?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Well, we're not building enough. We're not building enough electricity. You know, and we could definitely go into conversations about how we're not pushing for nuclear, and we're not pushing for that. We're cutting stuff. We're saying wind and solar is going to be enough for Canada. I don't know about you, but that's scary to me. That's when people freeze.
I'll just say that I think the problem is that we've let activists sort of take over the narrative, and rather than base it upon science and people that actually know their type of careers, we basically have kneeled down to a lot of these people that say the world is ending in 20 years because climate change is happening, so therefore we need to drastically and rapidly change our way of life to the point that a lot of these things that are being implemented are not well thought out. And the good example would be like that Edmonton bus situation where you have people that actually live in cold weather. Edmonton definitely gets cold weather. And the fact that they did not even bother to check to see what a battery life on one of those buses would run for in like -20-degree weather.
Or even -30 or what? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Well, these activists, to be honest with you, I think it's a death cult. Like they don't.
I think so too as well.
They just want humanity. They just want people dead. And like that's what ultimately, like, people don't realize that fossil fuels has allowed humanity to do amazing things. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not like a, you know, fat guy with a cigar in my mouth with a top hat being like, we should just strip mine everything. We should just, you know, burn everything and cause a ton of pollution. But, you know, like we have to be careful that if you got rid of fossil fuels tomorrow, people will die. You will not be able to grow your food. People will freeze to death. And this is crazy to me that people are like, oh, the world's going to end, so we got to kill people now. And it's just like, what are you talking about? Where's that human drive of innovation? You know, like these people are just so hopeless, where it's just like, can you not believe that someone, like, we're smart. We can do anything. We can go to Mars if we really wanted to. Why can't we come up with a way to do carbon capture? Why can't we do a different way of coming up with better technology that is reliable, right? Like, it's a death cult. That's what it is.
Was it Greta Thunberg or whatever her name was that basically said that we needed to switch to get off of fossil fuels like in like 5 years, and then you had the leader or like ex-leader of Greenpeace that was like, yeah, and then you're going to basically have the death of billions because everyone's going to strip mine the planet of the trees in order to heat their homes so they don't freeze to death.
Yep. Well, this is
left. Oh my god.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like people think that more deaths happen through heat, which is a complete lie. More people die from exposure to cold than heat waves. And this is the thing. Like you can't even have a conversation with these people because you can't even state you can't even just say, like, yeah, okay, I agree. Climate change is happening. Do I think it's the end of the world? Absolutely not. I don't think it's the end of the world. What do humans do best? We're great at adapting. We are great at figuring out the environment we live in and adapting it to being optimal. So I don't understand these people that are like, oh, the world is going to end. It's like, the world's not going to end. Human beings are going to figure it out. You know, have a little hope in humanity. These people have no hope in humanity. Anyway, we're talked about that topic a little bit too long. So we're on to our final article, which I think, comes into... We had a theme today, if our viewers, listeners out there have heard, but we're talking about the cost of living, and now we're moving to our final article here, and it's Canada's surging cost of living. Canada's surging cost of living fuels reverse immigration. And so I'll just read the headline here, or the first one. The dream of making it big in Canada is turning into a battle for survival for many immigrants due to the high cost of living and rental shortages, as rising immigration numbers hint at newcomers being forced to turn their back on a country that they chose to make their adopted home. So, what do you think? What do you think, Talt?
I think that this is actually really funny to read. Because part of it is that, first of all, I understand the situation that Canada at this point has just become so obscenely expensive to actually reside within, that you are in many regards forced to leave and maybe go back to your home country due to the housing costs. I mean, I've heard from people that, for like $5,000, they can get a gigantic house and a large amount of property in their home country. The question I really have to ask is, for those individuals, why did they come to Canada? Because in my eyes, when you come to Canada, I kind of believe that you're coming to be part of the family, and that you're there basically for the long run, and that you are basically going to be here through thick and thin. But I mean, I get it.
Well, it's...
Go for it.
I think it's, in an ideal world, I think Canada... Like, we are a nation of immigrants, let's be honest here, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I completely agree with you that the point of coming here, at least in my, idealized viewpoint, is people are coming here to make a family, to put down roots, getting away from, maybe violence, maybe discrimination, all of these kind of things. And coming over here and being like, this is a good place to raise a family. This is a good place to invest my time and my effort into. But I do agree with you. I think and if you look at the history of Canada, there's always been people that just come here for either making a quick buck and leaving, or getting into the United States, right? So, but it's just a shame that we that people are just like, they're not seeing the shine of Canada anymore. And I think that's actually, we're in trouble, to be honest with you, because of that.
I actually think so as well, and I think one of the problems is that it's a little bit... What I meant by being funny is, like, for example, you had Trudeau that went and talked about how, they're going to be bringing in so many immigrants, per year, and now at this point, people are just delusioned. Even living abroad, or people that are from other countries can see through the facade that he's basically, trying to push. And I kind of like reinforce exactly what I was saying as well. Like, for example, I knew different groups of people that are not from Canada. One was this Japanese couple, and they had came to the city that I lived, and their main goal was to live here. Like, their goal was basically that they wanted to put down the roots. They wanted to be Canadian. They wanted to have like the Canadian type of experience. And then there was another individual that I knew that their purpose of being here was literally just to make money, and then they didn't really care about what happened to Canada. So you can see like that stark kind of contrast. Personally, for me, I would much prefer like the Japanese individuals that wanted to actually be here and build the foundation that is Canada.
Oh, totally. And I think that's how you build our country. That's how you have to have immigration to Canada. Like, we are a small country. We're only 30 million people. But, I just find it like sad that we're getting to the point where people are just like, oh, I'm out of here. Like, screw this place. I can't even make money here. So even for those people that, and I have heard stories about people who came here just for money, but ended up staying. And it ended up making families and ended up investing in Canada, right? Because they fell in love with it, right? But what about people who can't make any money, and even people who want to come here and make a family and going, I can't even start a family because I can't even afford rent.
Well, look at average Canadian citizens. Like, if anything, there should be programs to help Canadian families start a family.
Oh,
But you
totally.
have, like, what is it in the news? Like, the Canadian government just gave like $5 billion to Cuba and stuff like that. Imagine if that was actually
That was
distributed, or like a program set up so
yeah.
that it encouraged people to actually have families at this
Well,
point.
that's $5 billion to the Philippines. That's where it went.
Well, Philippines, sorry,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, no, exactly. Like, well, this is just like we're out of money, and we're,
Yeah.
we're not investing. We're not investing in our like
Future, yeah.
yeah, like we have to. There's nothing wrong with like we are part of the same planet. We're part of the human race. I think there are instances where as a country, we should be helping out other areas that need the help. But at the same time, it's just like $5 billion. Where did you get that $5 billion?
Well, because they just keep printing the money.
Well, yeah, exactly. But it's just like we're losing our capacity to like there's record use of food banks, and you're sending $5 billion over to.
The problem is that these government institutes don't actually care about the. I shouldn't say that they don't care, but it seems that average people sort of the thought of average people sort of fleets their mind when it comes to allocating funds for different type of things. I get it that there's money for overseas development and everything like that, but at some point you have to go and say, like, hey, the people in your home country that are providing this money, who GDP, or that their work has basically produced this type of money. At some point you have to go, okay, well, maybe we need to invest in our country. Maybe we need to focus on our actual citizens and help improve their day of life.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, what could $5 billion do to Canada to help those people who are on in the food banks, or
a fair bit,
or helping with the housing issues that we have, where we don't have enough housing. Like, it's just insane to me. And yeah, like, I was so proud of, and I don't know, this is how you felt, but 20 years ago, 15 years ago even, where it was just like, I was so proud of my country. I was like, great, we're bringing in people around the world. Wonderful. Glad they're coming here. Glad they're integrating into our society and following our laws and all this kind of stuff. And I'm proud of that. I think that's a great thing. But now it's just like, we're bringing in 1 million people to work, our fast food jobs.
Yep.
Yeah, our minimum jobs. And, they don't have the opportunity to actually be invested in our country. And they're bringing their issues over. And it's causing, major issues across multiple cities that we've seen in the last 2 months with the Israeli and Hamas war. Like, these are things where I'm just like, we need to invest more into ourselves and the importance of Canada and making sure that people can come here and can create a life for themselves. And also for people who are already here. Yeah, we want you to have families. We want to support you guys because you're paying into it. It's you're Canadians, right?
Well, the other thing is that the way that we have this type of immigration doesn't help anybody long term, because what happens is a lot of these individuals that immigrate over, they just get sort of funneled towards the large cities.
Yeah.
And that does not help anybody, because it just drives up the cost for housing and rent, beyond belief. And then you have the situation where people live in this vicious cycle that we just talked about before.
Well, dude,
go for it.
We're the second largest country on this planet.
Yep.
Second largest country, and we're out of room. Have you thought about building somewhere else? Have you thought about incentivizing people to move out of Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, Winnipeg? Like, get out of these cities and incentivize people to go to the smaller communities. I don't understand why we're not like, I think back to the old posters when people were moving out west in the days before Confederation or a little bit after Confederation, where they were like, move out west. Here's some land. We want you to go and grow a family here. Like, don't stay in the one city, right?
Well, that's the sad part, is the government needs to release Crown land, and they basically need to tell people, like, hey, we will give you like a plot of land that you can possibly develop on your own, but there are rules and regulations to how that happens, just so you don't get people to basically come over and grab up a whole bunch of land.
Of course.
Like not basically people that are not going to cheat the system. But that's what they need to do. They need to open up crown land and basically say, hey, this is open for development. Yeah. We want to see some type of prosperity in it. But of course, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is just the final note on this one is, like no corporations can own it. Only, individuals, and you can't have more. And there's a lot of we can talk about that one for a long time, but we are at time. Talt, thank you once again. This has been a great conversation. This is great to just talk about these things, right? And I think hopefully our listeners are out there listening and learning something new about Canada. But we will be doing this every week at Sunday. We'll be putting out a YouTube video, and hopefully we maybe do some more videos in the future. But this is what we're hoping to do. And Talt, do you have any final words for our listeners?
No, I'm just looking forward to our next episode.
Me too. All right. Well, we'll talk to you later. See ya.